Hi, I'm Liz.
Because of COVID, Havana is on lockdown right now. There is no public transportation.
If you wanna get somewhere, toca caminar. O montar bicicleta.
But we are used to this. Back in the 90s, we stopped getting oil from the Soviet Union after it collapsed. There were massive fuel shortages and we had to move around without cars or buses. Last year, we got hit by another energy crisis. But this time, it was different. Vista Hermosa is an organic farm on the outskirts of Havana. No chemicals are used on its animals or crops. And recently, they've even stopped running their tractors, but not by choice.
¿Ustedes reciben combustible del Estado?
Hoy por hoy, digamos que un 5 o 10% del que recibíamos hace algunos años. Nosotros teníamos 2 tractores acá en la finca y están siendo sustituidos por la tradición animal. La tierra que usted pudiera lograr arar en 1 hora con un tractor necesitaría un día con un Ayunteway. Debido a las escaseces nos vimos prácticamente obligados a convertir la finca en una finca agroecológica. Pero en las grandes siembras, el petróleo es el eje de todo. Esto va a traer consecuencias graves para la producción de alimentos para el pueblo.
Havana's market still has fruit and vegetables, but a lot of basic foods have become hard to find.
Están entrando menos camiones, está entrando menos mercancía también. Y la calidad no es la misma, porque mucha mercancía se está echando a perder en los campos, no hay combustible para los camiones.
No están permitiendo la entrada de los buques petroleros por el bloqueo que tienen hecho a Cuba.
The U.S. embargo, or blockade, has been around for 60 years, but it got worse last year when the Trump administration began blocking oil from getting to Cuba.
Out of Havana, where there appears to be some kind of gas crisis.
El combustible escasea en Cuba una vez más.
You can see the long lines.
En estos días no nos va a entrar combustible.
The Trump administration is sanctioning the ships who deliver that fuel.
La isla dejó de recibir el petróleo subsidiado de Venezuela.
The U.S. wants to stop the oil trade between the 2 political allies.
Cuba used to depend on the Soviet Union for oil. Now, we depend on Venezuela. 20 years ago, Hugo Chavez was elected president of Venezuela. Cuba and Venezuela became close allies. Venezuela has more oil than any other country in the world. But their healthcare system needed help, so the 2 governments made a deal. Venezuela sent us oil, and we sent them my mom. I'll never forget the day my mom flew to Venezuela on a medical mission. It was my 10th birthday and I was so sad. I couldn't understand why she left. I do now. Cuban doctors who go on missions can earn more than 10 times their normal salaries. When my mom came back, she remodeled our house and bought a new refrigerator and television.
Incluso pagó por mi fiesta y mis fotos de 15. That's a big deal in Cuba, and it's not cheap. ¿Por qué te fuiste a Venezuela, mami?
Me hice médico, cuyo objetivo fundamental precisamente era brindar ayuda a las personas que lo necesitan, y era muy difícil decir que no. Y también porque no te lo voy a negar, motivada también por el aspecto económico. Era la primera vez que nos separábamos y realmente fue muy difícil para tu madre, prácticamente con el alma rota, dejando una niña de apenas 10 años. De lo cual me iba a perder muchas cosas de su crecimiento, pero no solamente fui yo, fuimos tantas las que dimos el paso al frente y realmente no me arrepiento.
¿Te parecía justa la cooperación que tenían Cuba y Venezuela, es decir, el convenio entre los 2 países?
Yo pienso que sí, que fue justo. Nosotros le brindamos salud y ellos estaban muy necesitados de eso. Y también era justo para nosotros porque recibíamos petróleo, también muy necesitado por nuestro país.
This troika of tyranny, this triangle of terror stretching from Havana to Caracas to Managua, under President Trump, the United States is taking direct action against all 3 regimes.
In 2017, Trump named John Bolton as his national security advisor. Bolton is a neoconservative known for pushing for U.S. military intervention around the world.
So you've called for regime change in Iraq, Libya, Iran, and Syria.
The decision to overthrow Saddam Hussein was the correct decision.
To secure a route to preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons is to change the regime in Tehran.
The way to end the North Korean nuclear threat is to end North Korea.
Under Trump, Bolton began working to overthrow the Venezuelan government. Until recently, Venezuela exported more oil to the United States than anywhere else. Why topple a government you are dealing with? In 2005, Hugo Chavez began providing cheap oil to countries throughout the Caribbean. Venezuela's oil diplomacy offered a way for countries to be less dependent on the United States, and it helped Cuba reduce the impact of the blockade. But this South-South cooperation threatened U.S. hegemony. John Bolton began talking about the Monroe Doctrine, which dates back to 1823.
The Monroe Doctrine is alive and well.
The Monroe Doctrine basically says the Western Hemisphere belongs to the United States. It's been used to justify U.S. invasions in Latin America for more than a century.
Send the troops!
We seek a peaceful transition of power, but all options are open. Nothing could be better for the future of Venezuela, and nothing could be better for the future of another captive nation, Cuba.
Thank you, Mr. President.
But US-led regime change in Venezuela failed. So the Trump administration began accusing Cuba of having sent troops to prop up the government of Nicolás Maduro.
The dictator Maduro is a Cuban puppet.
The people of Venezuela are essentially Cuba's hostage.
Cuba is the true imperialist power in Venezuela.
If this afternoon 20 to 25,000 Cubans left Venezuela, I think Maduro would fall by midnight.
There are 20,000 Cubans in Venezuela, and most of them are health workers like my mom.
The idea that a poor country like Cuba is propping up an oil-rich country like Venezuela is crazy, pero la verdad, poco importa.